Hello, I am Jonathan. I am David. David met Jonathan, the king's son, and there was immediate bond between them. Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan took off his robe that was on him and gave it to David, together with his armor, sword, bow, and belt. Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. Now you are the commander of the men of war. So Saul made him a commander over the men of war, and this was good in the sight of all the people, and also Saul's servants. When Saul and his army were coming home, the woman came out singing and dancing to meet Saul. The women sang to each other as they celebrated. Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Saul was very angry and displeased, and he kept his jealous eye on David. What is this? They credit David with 10,000s and me with only thousands. Next, they will be making him their king. The next day, a tormenting spirit from God came to Saul. As David was playing his lyre, Saul hurled his spear, thinking that he will pin David to the wall. But David escaped. Saul was afraid of David, for God was with David, but turned away from Saul. Finally, Saul sent David away and made him a commander of 1,000 men, and David faithfully led his troops. David continued to succeed in everything he did, for God was with him. When Saul recognized this, he became even more afraid of David. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he was so successful. Why did Saul make David the commander of the men of war? Because David was successful in everything that Saul asked him to do. How did people respond to David and his success? All people loved David and praised him for everything he did. How was David successful in everything he did? Because God was with David. What was the name of the person who became very close friend with David? Jonathan. Why was King Saul angry and jealous? Because people were praising David more highly than Saul. What was King Saul's condition, and what did he try to do when David was playing music for him? King Saul was overwhelmed with a tormenting spirit from God and tried to kill David with his spear. Why was Saul afraid of David? Because God was with David but turned away from Saul.
Hello everyone! Today we're going to look into 1 Samuel chapter 18 and see David's life that was with God and King Saul's life that was without God. When the rest of the Philistine army saw that their champion Goliath is dead, they all turned and ran away. And from the time when David won the fight with Goliath, the scripture shows us how things change for King Saul and David. 1 Samuel chapter 16 and chapter 18 tells us how God was with David but turned away from King Saul. The Lord was with David and had turned away from Saul. Now the Spirit of the Lord had left Saul. First, we're going to see how God was with David. Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Saul made him a commander over the men of war. David was welcomed by the people and Saul's officers. People danced for joy and sang a song.
Saul had struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s.
David escaped danger. David was appointed as a commander over 1,000 men, and he faithfully led his troops. David continued to succeed in everything he did. All Israel and Judah loved David. Now, let's look at King Saul. Saul became angry and jealous. Saul was filled with depression and fear by a tormenting spirit. Saul tries to kill David with his spear. Saul was afraid of David because he knew how God was with David. Do you remember how David went out to fight Goliath? David was not wearing any armor, nor had a sword or a spear. David went out only with his shepherd's staff, 5 stones, and sling. But yet, David was more confident than anyone. It was because he had the strongest armor and weapon, his faith in God. When God is with you, it's like having the strongest armor and the best weapon. David was successful in everything he did. He was loved and praised by all people, and David was protected, all because his heart was with God and God was with him. Saul's heart was not with God. Therefore, he was only able to see what the world sees, not what God was showing. Saul did not have faith in God. So Saul was filled with depression and fear. He was angry and jealous because all the attention and love was going to David. When you know God is with you, you have faith in God. Having God in your heart, having God on your side, means you have the best armor and the best weapons. Then whatever happens, whatever you see or hear, you will not be shaken with fear or depression or jealousy or anger, but you will see what God sees. And because of God, you will feel safe and protected and confident. You will have peace and joy, and you will see the hope.
On a white cardstock paper, draw a person figure. On another white cardstock paper, draw helmet, armor, belt, shield, sword, shoes, make sure to draw them in size that will fit to the person you just drew. Then color them. Don't color with black or any color too dark because we will need to write on them. After you color everything, cut them out. Using the glue or Velcro, dress the person with all the pieces. Write the names of each part: salvation, righteousness, truth, peace and gospel, spirit, faith. Write on the top left, the armor of God. Write on the top right, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 to 18. When God is with you, He will be your best armor, protecting and leading you.